I thought our story would end like a fairy tale, but I was living a lie. This is how I escaped from what I thought was love. It was our anniversary, the air sweet with the scent of jasmine, laughter filling our backyard. Everyone saw us, Alice and me, as the perfect couple. But I knew even then, something was off. My smile was forced, her laugh was too loud, too sharp. There was a tension beneath the surface that I couldn't ignore anymore. I'll never forget looking for a pen on our dining table. That's when I found it. A letter, not for me. From Alice to someone else. Words of affection that should have been mine. Words that tore at my heart. I stuffed it away, like I did with my doubts, hoping love could fix what was broken. But I was just covering up the truth. That night, under a sky full of stars, I was blind to what was coming. I didn't know I was at the start of my escape from this nightmare. I was still holding on to the illusion of us, not realizing every step from here would lead me to the truth, to my freedom, but it would be a fight I was just beginning to understand. I started to see the web Alice had woven around our life, and with every new thread I discovered, my world felt like it was crumbling. Suspicion became my constant companion. Every look, every word from Alice was now under my microscope. I began to notice discrepancies. Small at first, like unexplained charges on our credit card statements, then more significant, like missing documents. I felt a mix of betrayal and confusion. Here was the woman I loved, or at least thought I did, leading a double life. My heart was torn between the love I remembered and the cold reality I was uncovering. Anger simmered beneath my calm exterior, a rage I'd never felt before. I remember sitting in our living room, the one filled with memories of happier times, analyzing bank statements. There were withdrawals, large ones that I couldn't account for. My mind raced. Was she supporting another life? Another person? The more I dug, the more I found. Emails to lawyers about assets, about divorce, all without my knowledge. It was like watching a movie where you know the ending but can't stop the plot from unfolding. I was both the audience and the actor in this tragic play. Each revelation was a punch to the gut, yet there was this strange numbness setting in. I was learning to protect myself, to keep my emotions at bay so I could see clearly. I confronted her once, with the bank statements in hand. Her response was denial, then anger, then she turned it around on me. She accused me of being paranoid, of not trusting her. It was like I was losing my grip on reality, but I knew what I saw. The emotional toll was immense. I felt isolated, even among friends who still saw us as the perfect couple. I couldn't share this. It felt too personal, too shameful. How could I admit out loud that my marriage was built on lies? Yet there was this undercurrent of determination growing within me. I was piecing together a puzzle, one that would show me the full extent of Alice's deceit. I started to document everything, every odd transaction, every secretive phone call, every time she came home late with excuses that didn't add up. I felt like I was living two lives, one where I pretended everything was fine, and another where I was slowly uncovering the truth. The weight of this secret life was heavy, but it was also empowering. For the first time, I was taking control, even if it was to understand how little control I'd had. The emotional roller coaster was unbearable at times. I'd swing from anger to sadness, from hope to despair. But I knew I had to keep going, for my sanity, for my future. I was uncovering layers of manipulation, and with each layer, I was also uncovering parts of myself I didn't know existed. Strength, resilience, a fierce desire for truth. As I stared at another piece of evidence, a contract she had signed without my knowledge, I realized this was more than just finding out about an affair. This was about uncovering a life I never knew existed beside mine. And in that moment, I understood that this wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of my fight for freedom. The unraveling of our life together was not just about betrayal, it was about reclaiming my identity, my dignity. And as much as it hurt, each discovery was a step towards my new beginning. The truth was like a heavy cloak on my shoulders, each new revelation adding more weight. I was consumed by a cocktail of emotions, anger, betrayal, and a profound sense of loss. But beneath it all was a growing resolve to untangle the web Alice had spun around me. I found myself in a maze of deceit. Every conversation with Alice was now a minefield. I was looking for clues, for the truth, but also bracing for her manipulation. She was good at twisting the narrative, making me doubt my sanity. The gaslighting was subtle at first, but it escalated. I was the one supposedly losing my mind, not her living a double life. I remember one evening sitting across from her at dinner, the facade of love still intact for the world, but inside I was screaming. She spoke of mundane things, work, mutual friends, all while I knew she was hiding so much more. My heart ached with the knowledge of her deceit, yet I played along, my mind racing for evidence, for a way out. The emotional turmoil was like nothing I'd experienced. I oscillated between wanting to confront her, to scream the truth into the air, and a cold, calculated silence, gathering my evidence. Each night after she fell asleep, I'd comb through emails, bank statements, anything to piece together the puzzle of our life. One night I stumbled upon an email exchange between Alice and someone named Jay. Plans, secrets, lies. It was like discovering another betrayal in an already vast sea of them. The sting of it was fresh, a reminder of how deep her deception ran. I felt like a fool, but more than that, I felt a burning desire for justice, for my truth to be acknowledged. This discovery led to sleepless nights, my mind replaying every moment, every sign I should have seen. I was angry at her, but also at myself for not seeing sooner. How could I have been so blind to the woman I shared my life with? The emotional weight was crushing. I'd go to work, put on a smile, act like everything was normal, but inside I was a storm of emotions. I started to isolate myself, not trusting anyone with a secret, fearing judgment or disbelief. My friends, our friends, still saw us as the golden couple, and I felt utterly alone in this knowledge. But this isolation also fueled my determination. I began keeping a detailed journal, not just of the evidence, but of my feelings, my thoughts, my plans. It was therapeutic, a way to keep myself grounded as the world I knew was falling apart. I knew I couldn't confront Alice directly without more concrete proof. I needed to be smart, to use her tactics against her. I started recording our conversations, subtly, legally, capturing her lies, her excuses. Each recording was a step closer to my freedom, to proving I wasn't the one losing my mind. As I pieced together more evidence, I felt a shift within me. The pain of betrayal was still there, raw and real, but it was now accompanied by a fierce resolve to reclaim my life. I was no longer just the victim in this story. I was becoming the protagonist of my own life's narrative. This chapter of my life wasn't just about uncovering Alice's lies. It was about rediscovering myself, about finding the strength I didn't know I had. It was about realizing that sometimes the hardest truths lead to the most profound growth. The tension in our home was palpable, like a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. Every interaction with Alice was a test. My emotions stretched to their limits. I started confronting her, not directly at first, but with small, probing questions, each one a trap for her lies. One evening, as we sat in our kitchen, the silence thick with unspoken accusations, I brought up a recent trip she'd taken for work. "You mentioned visiting the city hall for that project, right?" I asked, my voice calm but my heart racing. She nodded, her smile faltering for just a moment. "I saw some photos online from that day. It looked more like a museum visit than city hall," I said, watching her closely. Her response was quick, too quick. "Oh, we went there afterward." But her eyes, they betrayed her. I felt a surge of anger, of victory, but also a deep sadness for the trust that was once there. These small confrontations became more frequent, each one chipping away at the facade. I would mention names from her emails, dates from her secretive calendar, watching her squirm under the weight of her own deceit. Each lie she told only fueled my resolve, my anger crystallizing into something sharper, more focused. My emotions were a whirlwind. My heart oscillated between rage and a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd confess. We could salvage something from this wreckage. But hope was quickly drowned by the reality of her betrayals. One night, over dinner, I set the trap for the big reveal. "I've been thinking about investing in that property you mentioned," I said, referring to an asset I discovered she was secretly trying to secure. Her fork paused midair, her face a mask of surprise. She hadn't expected me to know. The conversation spiraled from there, her excuses getting more elaborate, more desperate. My heart pounded, the moment of confrontation imminent. I felt a mix of fear, anticipation, and a strange sense of liberation. I played my final card, showing her a document with her signature, a contract for the property, one she hadn't shared with me. Her denial was immediate, but weak, her facade crumbling. The air between us was electric with tension, the confrontation escalating. I knew this was the beginning of the end, the point where all would be revealed. My emotions were raw, a blend of betrayal, hurt, and an emerging sense of empowerment. I was ready for the truth to come out, for the lies to be exposed, not just for my sake, but for the sake of moving forward, whatever that would look like after this storm. The air in our home was thick with tension, like the calm before a tempest. Each day was a battle of wits, words, and wills. The confrontation over dinner had left us both on edge, the veneer of civility cracking. "Mark, you're seeing things that aren't there," Alice said one morning, her voice tight with forced calm as she poured her coffee. "Am I, Alice? Or are you just good at hiding them?" I shot back, my tone sharp, the weight of my evidence making me bold. She slammed the coffee pot down, her facade slipping. "You're paranoid. This is why we need space, some time apart." I laughed, a humorless sound. "Space? You've had plenty of that already, haven't you? With Jay?" Alice's eyes flashed with anger, then fear, quickly masked. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but you do," I countered, pulling out my phone. "I have emails, messages, your plans." Her face paled, but she rallied. "You've been spying on me? How dare you? How dare I? How dare you betray our marriage, our life together?" My voice rose, the hurt and anger boiling over. She took a step back, her expression hardening. "You think you're so righteous, Mark? What about your late nights at the office? Your work trips? Don't act like you're the only one who's been lonely in this marriage." The accusation stung, a reminder of how far we'd both strayed from our vows. "This isn't about me. It's about your lies, your secret life." Alice's laugh was cold. "Secret life? Maybe if you were around more, I wouldn't need one." I felt the jab, the truth in her words slicing through me. "So it's my fault you decided to cheat, to lie, to steal from us?" "Steal? I was trying to secure our future," she snapped, her voice rising. "You're so caught up in your little detective work. You're missing the bigger picture." "The bigger picture? You mean how you've been draining our accounts, planning to divorce me and take everything?" I challenged, my voice shaking with rage. She glared at me, her eyes blazing. "You think you've caught me, but you don't know half of it. You're not the only one with secrets, Mark." That hit me like a physical blow. What else was there? What secrets, Alice? What more could there possibly be? "You'll find out in court," she hissed, turning away to leave the room. I grabbed her arm, not letting her escape. "No, we're doing this now. No more running, no more hiding." She wrenched her arm free, her voice low and venomous. "You want to know everything? Fine. But remember, you're not the only one who's been keeping score." The room was charged with our mutual animosity, each word a weapon. I felt a mix of rage, betrayal, and a desperate need to understand how we got here. "Alice, we could have talked. We could have worked on this," I said, my voice softer, the fight draining out of me for a moment. "Worked on what, Mark? On the fact that we've been living a lie for years?" She looked at me, her eyes revealing a glimpse of the hurt she felt too. The conversation paused, the air heavy with unsaid words, with years of accumulated grievances. I knew then that this was beyond repair, that we were standing at the precipice of something irreversible. "We're going to war, Alice," I said, the finality in my voice echoing in the silent room. She nodded, her expression one of resigned determination. "Then let's make it count." As she walked away, I knew the battle was just beginning, the tension between us a catalyst for what would be a long, drawn-out conflict, where every secret would be laid bare. every lie confronted. The days leading up to our mediation were a blur of tension and strategic silence. Every interaction was now a chess move, each of us anticipating the other's next play. The house felt like a battlefield, every room a potential war zone. During one particularly charged evening, I cornered Alice in our study, where she was sorting through files. "What are you hiding now?" I asked, my voice low, the calm before the storm. She looked up, her eyes sharp. "Nothing you don't already know, Mark. But you're not the only one with leverage." I stepped closer, my voice a whisper of threat. "You think you can control this narrative? I have enough to dismantle your life, Alice." She stood, her posture defiant. "And I have enough to show the world what you've been doing behind closed doors." The accusation hung in the air, a silent challenge. "What exactly do you think you have?" I demanded, my heart pounding, wondering what else she could possibly know. "You think you're the only one who can play detective?" She pulled out a folder, slamming it on the desk. "Expenses, unexplained absences, your little escapades." I felt a chill, the realization that she had been gathering her own ammunition. "So this is what it's come to? Mutually assured destruction?" She leaned in, her voice venomous. "If that's what it takes to get what I want." The room felt smaller, the air thicker with our mutual disdain. "And what do you want, Alice? Besides everything we built together?" "Justice," she spat, "for all the years I felt trapped, for all the lies you're so quick to pin on me." I laughed, a bitter sound. "Justice? You've redefined the word." The door creaked open, a reminder that our private war had witnesses in our shared life. Friends, family, they would soon see the ugly truth. The mediation was set to reveal all, each of us armed with our truths and lies. As we sat across from each other in the sterile room, the mediator's presence did nothing to ease the palpable tension. "You first," Alice said, her tone mocking, daring me to cast the first stone. I laid out my evidence, the emails, the hidden accounts, the contracts. Her face remained impassive, but her eyes betrayed her when I mentioned Jay. She countered with her own revelations, each one a blow to my image. My late nights, unexplained expenses, the hints of infidelity. The room felt like it was shrinking, the walls closing in as our lives were dissected. The mediator tried to interject to find a resolution, but it was clear this was beyond mediation. This was about exposure, about each of us ensuring the other's downfall. As we left the session, the air outside was a sharp contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. "See you in court," Alice said, her words a promise of the battle to come. I watched her walk away, knowing that this was just the prelude to a much larger confrontation, where every secret would be a weapon, every lie a battlefield. The days leading up to the court hearing were a maelstrom of preparation and dread. Every moment felt like a countdown, each tick of the clock amplifying the tension. The house, once our shared sanctuary, was now a battleground of paper and evidence, of strategy sessions with lawyers who seemed more like generals in this war. I spent nights poring over documents, my lawyer beside me, going through each piece of evidence, each email, each transaction. "We need to be ready for anything she throws at us," my lawyer Linda warned, her voice stern but supportive. The night before the hearing, sleep eluded me. My mind replayed every argument, every revelation. I was in the living room, surrounded by legal papers, when Alice walked in, her presence a cold wind. "Still plotting your victory?" she asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Preparing," I corrected, not looking up from the documents. "Unlike you, I don't take pleasure in this." She scoffed, sitting across from me, her demeanor one of forced nonchalance. "You think you've won already? You haven't seen all my cards?" I finally met her gaze, the weight of our shared history heavy in my eyes. "Neither have you seen all of mine." There was a pause, a moment where the past seemed to hang between us, palpable and sorrowful. "Why did it have to come to this, Alice?" I asked, a hint of the old me surfacing. "Because we stopped seeing each other, Mark. We were just shadows in each other's lives," she said, her voice softening for a moment before hardening again. "Now, we're just fighting for our shadows." The conversation ended there, the silence that followed more telling than any words could be. We were both prisoners of this conflict, yet somehow also its architects. The morning of the hearing, the courtroom felt like an arena. Friends and family on both sides filled the benches, their whispers a backdrop to our personal apocalypse. Alice and I avoided eye contact. Each of us knew the other's every move by now. As the judge called the session to order, my heart was a drum in my chest. Linda leaned over, whispering, "Stay sharp. Remember, this is about truth, not just winning." The proceedings began with Alice's side presenting their case, her lawyer painting a picture of me as the neglectful, possibly unfaithful spouse. I listened, feeling the sting of each accusation, each twisted truth. Then it was our turn. Linda laid out the evidence methodically, the financial deceit, the hidden assets, the emotional manipulation. I watched Alice's face, seeing the mask slip as each piece of evidence was presented. "This isn't just about infidelity," Linda said, her voice clear and strong. "This is about a systematic breakdown of trust, of a marriage, for personal gain." Alice's lawyer tried to counter, to bring up my supposed indiscretions. But Linda was ready. She introduced new evidence, a recording where Alice discussed her plans with Jay, her voice cold and calculating. The room felt like it had dropped in temperature, the revelation a shock to all. Alice's face was a study in fury and fear as she realized the extent of what had been uncovered. We were at the brink, the final moments before the big reveal, where everything would be laid bare. As I stood to testify, looking at Alice across the courtroom, I felt a mix of sorrow, anger, and an odd sense of liberation. This was it, the end of our dance of deception, the moment where the mask would fall and the true faces of our marriage would be seen by all. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with anticipation as I took the stand. The weight of every eye on me was palpable, but my focus was solely on the truth. "I've lived in a shadow of doubt, of betrayal," I began, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside. "But today I stand here not just for myself, but for the truth we both danced around." Alice's gaze was fiery, her composure cracking. "You think you're the victim here, Mark? You've been just as deceitful," she countered, her voice breaking. I turned to her, the years of pain and love in my eyes. "Maybe, Alice, but the scale of deceit, the manipulation, that was yours. I was blind, but not anymore." The judge intervened. "Mr. Thompson, please continue with your testimony." I detailed the discovery of the secret accounts, the emails, the clandestine meetings. Each word felt like lifting a stone from my chest. I was fighting for a marriage that was already lost. I was fighting for my sanity. Alice's lawyer tried to interject, but the judge silenced him. The court listened, rapt, as I played the recording of Alice planning her future, devoid of me, with another. As the recording ended, the room was stunned into silence. Alice looked defeated, the reality of her actions catching up to her. "Mrs. Thompson," the judge addressed Alice, "do you have anything to say in your defense?" She stood, her voice trembling. I felt trapped. I was fighting for my freedom, in my way. I didn't mean to hurt Mark like this." I looked at her, seeing the vulnerability she rarely showed. "We both lost ourselves, Alice, but you chose deceit over dialogue." The judge's gavel came down, the decision echoing through the room. "I find in favor of Mr. Thompson for the division of assets based on the evidence of misconduct and manipulation. However, financial support will be granted to Mrs. Thompson, considering the complexity of this case." The room erupted in whispers as the judge's words sank in. I felt relief, not from victory, but from the release of a burden I'd carried too long. As we left the courtroom, Alice grabbed my arm, her eyes wet with unshed tears. "I'm sorry, Mark, not just for what you found out, but for what we lost." I looked at her, the flood of memories, good and bad, overwhelming. "I hope you find your peace, Alice. I know I need to find mine." She nodded, letting go, a silent acknowledgement of the end of our shared journey. Walking away from the courthouse, the weight I felt wasn't just from the outcome, but from the closure. I felt a mix of sorrow for the love we once had, anger for the betrayal, and an odd sense of freedom. Months later, I was in my new apartment, the walls adorned with photos of new beginnings, with friends, with nature, with myself. I had started writing a book, not for revenge, but as a cathartic journey through my pain, hoping to help others see the signs I missed. Alice, I heard, had moved on too, her life quieter, perhaps searching for the peace she mentioned. The story of our marriage ended not just with revelations, but with an understanding that sometimes the greatest betrayal leads to the most profound self-discovery. I learned to forgive, not for her, but for me, to move forward without the chains of our past. In the end, this wasn't just about divorce. It was about rebirth, about finding oneself in the wreckage of love and lies, and about the strength to start anew.